Chapter 1. It was the 118th year of the Cataclysm era, and the annual awakening ceremony was taking place at the Awaken Plaza of the 6th base. Shen Xingyan, are you nervous? In the vast crowd, a cute girl, her childishness gone, exuding youthful vigor, and dressed in a dazzling red dress, looked at the slender young man beside her with a nervous expression. Her soft, sweet voice made anyone who heard it feel a sense of comfort. Although the slender young man named Shen Xingyan said he was only a little, but fine, the unconscious bobbing of his Adam's apple still betrayed his restless inner state. After answering, Shen Xingyan's gaze remained fixed on the front, showing no intention of continuing to speak with the girl beside him. The girl glanced sideways at this man, whose words didn't match his actions, and couldn't help but pout. Her mood, however, relaxed, and she then also looked straight ahead, focusing on the huge white light screen in the center of the plaza. The scorching sun baked the ground, and hundreds of thousands of young people gathered at the Awaken Plaza. They showed no complaints about being exposed to the blazing sun, only because this was a crucial moment that would change their destinies. At this moment, everyone in the plaza had nervous expressions in their eyes, as if they were taking the human race's college entrance exam a long time ago, but beneath this tension, there was also a glimmer of hope. They stared intently at the front, as if through this white light screen, they could see their brilliant future lives. Time slowly passed, and finally, as it approached 12 p.m., the highest-ranking officer of the 6th base appeared out of thin air directly in front of the huge light screen, his appearance eliciting cheers from the entire crowd. No one in the plaza found the 6th officer's sudden appearance strange, as they had long heard of his miraculous abilities. Looking at the middle-aged man suspended in midair, everyone's eyes glowed with fervent light, revealing a strong sense of yearning. As the 6th officer appeared, his voice, without any equipment amplification, simultaneously reached the ears of hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza. Children, it is once again time to decide your future destinies. Every time this moment arrives, I feel very worried. 118 years ago, Blue Star suddenly expanded hundreds of times, and then primordial energy began to erupt. All living beings became increasingly powerful, and our human race was naturally no exception. And while countries around the world had not yet adapted to this sudden change, various strange creatures instantly spread across the entire Blue Star. Their combat power was so immense that no individual could match them at that time. The human race also suffered a heavy blow as a result, almost completely disappearing from Blue Star. Fortunately, our ancestors bravely resisted, using the thermal weapons, which were still somewhat effective at the time, to defend against the attacks of those disasters, which allowed us to have a chance to recuperate. But as the disasters absorbed primordial energy and grew increasingly powerful, the effectiveness of thermal weapons against them also diminished. However, fortunately, there is always a way out. It was at that moment of life and death that these mysterious light screens, like the one behind me, began to appear in various places. After exploration, we discovered that every adult human race member who turns 18, as long as they pass through these light screens, will awaken their profession and superhuman talent. Then, through the star origin that everyone is familiar with, we strengthen ourselves, and at the same time, it allowed us to master the correct method of primordial energy, which can enhance the power of these miraculous abilities. It was through these miraculous abilities, coupled with fearless and heroic struggles, that our ancestors allowed us to survive. Now, let us all raise our hands to the sky and pay our respects to them. At this point, the 6th officer's voice paused. He solemnly raised his right hand and looked up at the sky, a strong sorrow flashing in his eyes. Everyone present simultaneously made the same gesture. Even children as young as 3 or 4 years old imitated them, looking at the sky with solemn expressions on their small faces. 1 minute later, everyone lowered their gaze, and the 6th officer's voice resumed. Now it is your turn to contribute to the human race. I truly hope that you can awaken a good combat profession and talent, injecting new vital forces into our base. Finally, I offer you one last piece of advice. No matter what the outcome of your awakening, never give up easily. The future, after all, belongs to you. Now, begin the awakening. As the sixth base officer's words fell, the huge white light screen instantly turned a dazzling red. That red seemed to be filled with an alluring power, making the fighting spirit of hundreds of thousands of people in the plaza, which had already been ignited, even more vigorous, and their hearts began to pound wildly. The person in charges of each district, please enter in the order previously planned. After awakening, register and then proceed to your respective professional areas to wait. As the guiding voice echoed through the plaza, each area began to move. The sixth base is divided into 5 large districts: East District, South District, West District, North District, and Central District. The Central District was undoubtedly the most privileged area, where most of the people who had made outstanding contributions to the base and their families resided, and it was also a place coveted by people from other districts. The method to enter the Central District was also very simple: exchange it for military merits. As long as one had enough military merits, they could move in smoothly. Of course, if one awakened a super talent, they would also be invited to the Central District for key points protection and cultivation. But such individuals were 1 in 10,000. Due to the stable conditions of the Central District, it also had the largest number of people in this awakening queue. Watching the children from the Central District enter the red light screen first, people from other districts couldn't help but show envious expressions. Shen Xingyan and the little girl named Chu Wai were naturally no exception. As he watched the surging figures, Shen Xingyan yearned, and at the same time, his hands began to clench tightly, as if trying to grasp something. Chu Wai naturally noticed Shen Xingyan's state, and after a moment of thought, deeply understood his feelings. After all, both being from the North District, although they attended the same school, their family circumstances were vastly different. Shen Xingyan's parents unfortunately did not survive the cataclysm 8 years ago. From then on, the 10-year-old Shen Xingyan began to bear the responsibility of supporting himself and his sister, which made him, imperceptibly, think more and mature more than children his age. And this opportunity for awakening was truly a chance that could change his destiny. If it were her, she probably wouldn't even perform as well as him. Understanding this, Chu Wai gently patted Shen Xingyan's hand and gave him an encouraging look, comforting his nervous emotions. Shen Xingyan, who had been constantly giving himself psychological hints, smiled faintly at this, and his tightly clenched hands stopped trembling. Then, together, they followed the crowd forward. When he arrived in front of the huge light screen, Shen Xingyan's steps involuntarily began to stiffen. However, before he could adjust, he was pushed into the light screen by the surging crowd. Immediately, he felt as if a seed had broken out of its shell in his mind. Shen Xingyan knew that this was his profession, and talent beginning to awaken. Although this strange feeling was something he was experiencing for the first time, it was not unfamiliar, as his teachers had repeatedly emphasized such matters in school. Especially at this moment, one must not be impatient, but rather quietly experience the entire process of its emergence, as this would be quite beneficial for the future improvement of one's abilities. However, before Shen Xingyan could carefully savor the sensation, he was abruptly thrown out of the light screen, a scene that instantly sent a chill through his heart. The school had taught about all sorts of signs that might appear during awakening, and Shen Xingyan had kept them all in mind. Being thrown out at such an extremely fast speed indicated a much lower probability of him awakening a combat profession. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan immediately panicked and quickly looked at the black card that had appeared in his hand out of thin air. Everyone, after awakening, would receive such a card, similar to an ID card, which everyone called a star origin card. It recorded the cardholder's profession and personal information, as well as communication and transaction functions. More importantly, people could connect to star origin through it. Shen Xingyan quickly placed the star origin card on his forehead to check the information on it. Name: Shen Xingyan ID 118,120,431 to 9527. Profession: farmer. Professional skill 1. Consumes a certain amount of primordial energy points to increase the growth rate of crops in a specified area by plus 10%. The larger the area, the more primordial energy points consumed. Duration: 10 hours. Skill cooldown: 24 hours. Strength: 10 points. Agility: 10 points. Physique: 10 points. Spirit: 10 points. Health: 100/100 points. Primordial energy: 18/18 points. Stamina: 10/10 points. Physical attack: 10 points. Spell attack: 10 defense: 10 points. Speed: 10 points. Talent: Summon skeleton. Summons a skeleton monster with all attributes at 1 for combat. Cooldown: 24 hours. Chapter 2. In the attribute panel, all of his physical attributes had reached the maximum values required by the school, which was within Shen Xingyan's expectations. After all, he was always first in his daily training, so such values were not surprising. However, upon seeing the information in the profession row, Shen Xingyan's heart immediately turned to ashes, and the light in his eyes extinguished. Farmer. Why was it this auxiliary profession? Even a blacksmith would be better than this common farmer profession, right? A blacksmith's talent and professional bonuses would, to some extent, develop the body, making it not impossible to fight disasters after strengthening one's physique. But now it was the farmer profession. Its skill bonuses only applied to crop, offering no help to himself at all. Its only use was to allow him to barely make a living. And what about his own talent skill, summoning a skeleton with all attributes at 1? What kind of bizarre talent was this? He had never heard of such a talent before. Farmer talents usually involved increasing cultivation speed or stamina. This was the first time he had seen a summoning-type talent skill like this. It was quite rare. But what good was rarity? A skeleton with attributes of 1 wouldn't even count as cannon fodder on the battlefield, let alone be able to kill disasters. Awakening such a result made Shen Xingyan feel as though he had fallen into an ice cellar. The scorching sunlight outside did nothing to alleviate the coldness in his heart. Having been anxious for several days, at this moment, it felt as if all the strength had been drained from his body. He was limp all over, without any energy. Shen Xingyan moved his body as if on his last legs, heading to the registration personnel to register his profession. As the most basic auxiliary profession, those who awakened as farmers were undoubtedly the most numerous. After Shen Xingyan told the registrar his profession, he saw that the registrar had already registered countless farmer professions. The registrar, who had already registered countless farmer professions, looked at the dazed Shen Xingyan and couldn't help but sigh. He said nothing, but a hint of pity flashed in his eyes. After completing Shen Xingyan's profession registration, the registrar made no further inquiries and directly directed him to wait in the most crowded area. After all, the profession's ceiling was set. No matter how luxurious other attributes were, they were only at the elementary stage and would soon be surpassed. Asking more would only add to the sadness. At this point, Shen Xingyan no longer cared about the opinions and attitudes of others. Upon hearing the instruction, he merely nodded lightly and slowly walked towards the farmer area. However, before he had walked a few steps, an excited voice came from behind him. Shen Xingyan, I awakened as a mage, and a fire elemental mage with explosive damage. How about you? Do you need me to look out for you from now on, big brother? Shu Wai's voice instantly drew the attention of those around them. They saw the girl in a fiery red dress excitedly waving the card in her hand. Looking at this future fire elemental female mage, everyone's faces were filled with envy. Shen Xingyan, slowly accepting reality, turned around upon hearing her words and looked at the excited figure, a bitter smile appearing on his face. Although he was very happy for his deskmate's result, the thought of his own bottom-tier profession filled him with bitterness. After quickly registering all her information, Chu Wai came closer. Seeing Shen Xingyan's expression, She instantly understood and quickly reined in her excited smile, afraid that her joy would hurt him. Chu Wai looked at Shen Xingyan with worry, words on the tip of her tongue, but she swallowed them back. She felt that anything she said now would be inappropriate, so she could only silently watch Shen Xingyan, comforting him with her presence. After a while, Shen Xingyan seemed to have come to terms with it, a slightly carefree smile appearing on his face as he said, "Don't worry, it's nothing major. Even as a farmer, I won't starve to death by farming in Star Origin World every day. When my crop are harvested, I'll send you some to try." Upon hearing this, Chu Wai's worried expression not only didn't lessen but deepened. Although she had anticipated that Shen Xingyan's awakened profession wouldn't be too good, she hadn't expected it to be a purely logistical profession like farmer. He was clearly the most diligent and outstanding in his studies and training at school, so why did the heavens treat him this way? He only wanted to become strong enough to take care of his family, while also being able to go out and eliminate disasters, avenging his parents. Such a simple desire was cruelly stripped away by this profession. Looking at Shen Xingyan's forced cheerful smile, Chu Wai's eyes began to redden, and glistening tears instantly filled her entire eye sockets. "All right, don't be sad. The fact is what it is. Being sad won't help, we still have to look forward." Shen Xingyan ruffled Chu Wai's hair, comforting her on the surface, but also seemingly comforting himself. Chu Wai did not swat away Shen Xingyan's hand dismissively, as she usually would. Instead, she nodded obediently. After calming their emotions, under Chu Wai's worried gaze, the two walked towards different areas. Shen Xingyan arrived at the vast farmer profession area, feeling the low-pressure atmosphere there. He, too, gave a bitter smile in his heart, yet rationally forced himself to cheer up, as he still had to live his life. Looking at the combat professionist immersed in a joyful atmosphere in the distance, he felt unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. As the last person was thrown out, the light screen slowly turned white, then gradually disappeared, as if it had never existed. At this moment, the 6th base commander, hovering in the air, looked down at the various areas below and nodded with satisfaction. From his vantage point, he noticed that the proportion of various professions this time was better than before. The number of combat professionists such as knights, mages, warriors, assassins, and priests, as well as auxiliary combat professions, had reached about 15%, a significant improvement. These new forces would be their main strength in dealing with disasters in the future. However, looking at lifestyle professions like blacksmiths, tailors, and farmers, he shook his head with a hint of regret and sighed softly. Although lifestyle professions could also assist combat personnel, their immediate impact after awakening was not significant. Especially the farmer profession, which had the largest number of awakenings, was unable to plant crop on this land after the primordial energy outbreak. The planted seeds showed no reaction at all, and expecting a harvest was a pipe dream. It was practically a profession in name only. However, the existence of Star Origin World became their only way to survive, preventing them from starving while also allowing the entire base to develop steadily and orderly. If not for the existence of Star Origin World, this profession would probably be useless in the current era. After the earliest ancestors completed their awakening through the light screen, they discovered that everyone received a mysterious black card, which they named Star Origin Card. Initially, they didn't understand the function of this card, treating it only as a symbolic memento. It wasn't until they accidentally discovered that by placing the card on their forehead, they could clearly understand all their own information. Not only that, but according to the prompts, their consciousness could also enter a brand new world, the Star Origin World. This Star Origin World was an existence similar to previous online games. Engaging in combat or professional activities in that world would earn experience points, used to raise one's professional rank in the Star Origin World. And raising one's professional rank could increase the effectiveness of professional skill. At the same time, items produced by professions and spoils of war dropped from combat could be sold through an auction system or private transactions. Or they could be sold to the Star Origin Mall in exchange for Star Origin coins of equal value. Even more surprisingly, these Star Origin coins could not only be used in the Star Origin world, but also traded in the real world. And they had now become the primary currency within the base. Star Origin coins were truly a miraculous existence. In this era, they could purchase almost anything. As long as one had enough Star Origin coins, they could essentially achieve anything they desired, including materializing items from the Star Origin world into the real world. The existence of the Star Origin world truly explained what it meant that Dao could not save the unfortunate, but Kai could change fate. Chapter 3. Children, you have now completed the most important ceremony in your lives. From this moment on, you are independent individuals. The road ahead is still long. Regardless of how much your current result differs from what you imagined, since it is now your destiny, we must accept it. Work hard to improve your profession rank and strive for a better life for yourselves and your families. You are the hope for the future of the human race. Please, you must protect yourselves and fully realize your potential. We believe that through the efforts of our generations, one day in the future, our human race will be able to walk freely in the extraterritorial world, no longer confined to our small bases. Finally, we wish you all the best for the future, with peace and safety year after year, year after year, year after year. After Officer No. 6 finished his speech, an upsurge of fighting spirit welled up in the hearts of all the 18-year-old youths present. Whether they had awakened to combat professionists or life professions, Shen Xingyan was naturally no exception. He had already begun to contemplate how to use his current circumstances to create a better life for himself and his younger sister. However, before the hundreds of thousands present could fully vent this newfound spirit, Officer No. 6's figure suddenly vanished from everyone's sight. The disasters in the outer regions were growing increasingly severe. Figures like him had to maintain a constant, unyielding vigil at the borders to prevent any unforeseen incidents. After all, past lessons had taught them that what seemed like a tiny, insignificant oversight could often provide the disasters with the perfect opportunity for a surprise attack. It was a risk they could not afford to take. If not for the paramount importance of this awakening ceremony, which necessitated his presence to preside over it, he likely wouldn't have been able to return even once in a year or two. After Officer No. 6's departure, the people in the square began to leave in an orderly fashion according to the prearranged sequence. Each group led back to their respective districts by their area's responsible personnel. Shen Xingyan and Chu Wai returned together to the designated area for their school, awaiting further instructions. Within the entire school group, the students who had awakened as combat professionists and those with life professions automatically separated into two distinct camps. One side was enveloped in a heavy silence, while the other buzzed with lively noise. The contrast between the two was stark and immediate. When Shen Xingyan and Chu Wai appeared, everyone's eyes turned towards the pair, eager to learn what professions the school's Golden Boy and Jade Girl had finally awakened. Seeing the two approach, the leading teacher Lai also stepped forward, intending to inquire about their results. In all the training exercises organized by the school, Shen Xingyan and Chu Wai had always been outstanding figures. Their names consistently appeared at the top of rankings in various competitions. Chu Wai's family circumstances were relatively good. Both her parents were seasoned combat professionists, so their financial situation was naturally comfortable. If not for issues related to military merit, they likely would have already moved to the central district. With the various supplements provided by her family to promote the growth of her physical attributes, Chu Wai achieving such results was hardly surprising. But Shen Xingyan was different. Ever since the disasters struck 8 years ago, his parents had gone missing in action during those relentless battles and were most probably already martyred. Over the years, relying on the base's survivor benefits and the legacy left by his parents, Shen Xingyan had not only supported himself, but also his young sister. Moreover, under such circumstances, he had managed to achieve results that garnered the attention of the entire school. This had once become a stirring example promoted by the school, used to inspire other students to strive for excellence. From the moment he saw Shen Xingyan's demeanor, Teacher Lai had already formed his own judgment. The question on the tip of his tongue was swallowed back down, and a flicker of pity passed through his eyes. After all, he had taught many graduating classes and was highly skilled at reading students' moods. No matter how hard these youths tried to hide it, the subtle nuances in their expressions often revealed whether the outcome was favorable or not. The other students naturally also sensed something amiss. In this sensitive period of adolescence, their perceptions as peers were particularly acute. Well, Shen Xingyan. Looking at you, I bet you awakened as a blacksmith or something. But with all that strength of yours, being a blacksmith might actually suit you, sneered Song Jai, who had always been overshadowed by Shen Xingyan's rankings, seizing the first opportunity to taunt him with a mocking tone. This time, Song Jai had been lucky enough to awaken as a warrior. Although it wasn't his ideal mage profession, it was still a solid choice with considerable potential for future growth. After announcing his profession, he had basked in the envious looks from the crowd, which had inflated his ego considerably. Now, noticing that his arch-rival Shen Xingyan, despite maintaining a calm facade, exuded an air of dejection, he immediately guessed that the other must not have awakened any desirable profession. His heart swelled with glee. Song Jai, are you itching for a beating? Looking for trouble, huh? Before Shen Xingyan could respond, an infuriated Chu Wai fired back. If Shen Xingyan hadn't reacted quickly to hold her back, she probably would have already lunged at him. Chu Wai was already upset and resentful of the heaven's unfairness over Shen Xingyan, awakening as a farmer. Now, to have Song Jai publicly mock him on top of that, her anger flared up instantly. Oh ho, I was talking about Shen Xingyan. Why are you getting so worked up? Could it be there's really something going on between you two? Song Jai said, looking at the pair with a suggestive smirk, his implication clear. Hearing this, Chu Wai was overcome with a mix of embarrassment and rage, struggling even harder to break free from Shen Xingyan's restraint. Song Jai, regardless of what profession I awakened, dealing with you right now would still be more than enough. If you don't believe me, you're welcome to try. Shen Xingyan said, his tone calm as he looked at the increasingly arrogant Song Jai. The gap between them, having just awakened their professions, wasn't very large. Their current strength depended entirely on the physical foundation accumulated before awakening. Moreover, Shen Xingyan had awakened with maxed-out attributes. Even though he was just a farmer, if he were to face off against someone who had just awakened as a combat professionist, even if the opponent used their profession skills, he still had a high probability of being the last one standing. Seeing Song Jai's behavior becoming more and more unacceptable, Teacher Lai interjected with a stern rebuke. Song Jai, if you continue making such divisive remarks, I will report you to the school leader and have your qualification for the trial next month revoked. Hearing Teacher Lai's words, Song Jai, who had been about to retort further, instantly deflated like a punctured balloon. He could only glare at Shen Xingyan, anger simmering but not daring to voice it. Although they were now considered quasi-graduates after completing their awakening, and the school's direct authority over them had lessened, the graduation trial scheduled for a month later was a tangible benefit of graduation. He couldn't afford to miss it because of this. During the trial, not only could they catch a glimpse of the real world beyond the borders, but the risks were almost negligible. It was an exploratory journey conducted under the protection of the school's many high-rank combat professionists. If they were lucky, it was entirely possible to obtain rare items that could enhance various physical abilities. So, upon hearing Teacher Lai's warning, even the somewhat self-important Song Jai, proud of his warrior profession, had no choice but to obediently comply and shut his mouth. Chapter 4. Seeing Song Jai obediently shut up, Teacher Lai no longer bothered with him. Instead, following the procedure to inquire about and record the awakening results of Shen Xingyan and Chu Wai. Shen Xingyan was about to state his profession. Although the farmer profession indeed caused a huge disparity in his heart, what had to come still had to be faced, and he was already mentally prepared for it. However, Chu Wai answered first. She loudly said, "Teacher Lai, I awakened as a fire mage. Aside from my strength and physique being slightly lacking, all my other attributes are at maximum." As Chu Wai spoke, she subtly glanced at Song Jai, who was standing to the side. Her small hand clenched into a fist and she waved it at him. In the early stage of awakening, mages, being ranged spellcasters, naturally counter close combat professions like warriors. Therefore, Chu Wai's gesture was very clear, full of threat towards Song Jai. When Song Jai heard that the other party was actually a mage, and a fire mage at that, with explosive damage, he immediately deflated. He began to regret his rash actions just now, wondering why he had gotten carried away and provoked this grandma. According to Chu Wai's excellent family background, coupled with such a top-tier profession, her growth rate in the future would definitely be much faster than his. If he provoked her now, he would inevitably be severely beaten later. He, who had originally felt unconvinced by Teacher Lai's earlier reprimand, instantly lost his temper and quietly retreated backward without anyone noticing. Other classmates standing a bit further away, upon hearing Chu Wai's profession and body attributes, involuntarily showed envious expressions. Then, thinking of their own professions, they could only let out a bitter laugh. Teacher Lai smiled and nodded. A fire mage was considered a top-tier profession in their school. With the existence of this profession, their current batch would not be at the bottom and would be no less inferior compared to previous students. So, what is your innate skill? Teacher Lai's tone softened considerably as he looked at this lively girl in red, his expression filled with smiles. Teachers favoring good students is an age-old tradition, and Teacher Lai was naturally no exception. Fire mastery, which can increase the power of fire spells by 20%. Upon hearing Chu Wai's answer, Teacher Lai quickly recorded it in his notebook. Chu Wai having such a talent was within his expectations. After all, the awakening of talent generally corresponds with the profession, and this talent was very compatible with a fire mage. However, after Chu Wai loudly finished speaking, she then leaned closer to Teacher Lai and whispered, "Teacher Lai, can we register Shen Xingyan's professional information privately later?" Please." As she spoke, Chu Wai clasped her small hands together in a way that others couldn't see, her eyes filled with a pleading look towards Teacher Lai. Hearing Chu Wai's pleading words, Teacher Lai subconsciously looked at Shen Xingyan, his brow slightly furrowed. He vaguely guessed something and seemed to hesitate to speak. Looking at Chu Wai, who had already awakened as a mage, Teacher Lai finally sighed helplessly and gently nodded. Chu Wai's attitude already indicated that Shen Xingyan might have awakened a more ordinary lifestyle profession than a blacksmith. If that were truly the case, out of a young man's self-esteem, there was indeed no need to question him publicly. Seeing Teacher Lai agree to her request, Chu Wai turned to Shen Xingyan and playfully winked. Shen Xingyan also smiled helplessly and didn't say much, naturally understanding his deskmate's good intentions. After this period of self-adjustment, he had fully accepted the reality. Since fate had already destined him to be a farmer, he could only follow this Tao. There was no other way. At the moment of his awakening, he seemed to have grown up instantly. He had been somewhat precocious due to bearing the family's burdens too early, but now he was even more composed, and he no longer cared about others' gazes as much as before. After a journey of self-guidance, Shen Xingyan's heart also broadened significantly. No matter how glorious past honors were, they were just the past. People still had to look forward. Live his own life well, take care of his younger sister, and strive to accumulate some savings when he is old. Then exchange them for attribute points to go out to the extraterritorial world, doing his best to fulfill his final wish of eliminating the disaster on that battlefield. Everyone waited for a while longer until all the personnel from the North District were present. Then they embarked on their return dhow. With the advent of the primordial energy era, old transportation tools were gradually phased out, replaced by new types of transportation machinery driven by primordial energy. Those who awakened as the artifact refining lifestyle profession could use their professional skills to modify old machinery, allowing them to perform far beyond their previous capabilities. High-rank professionals could also create new machinery. With the existence of professional bonuses, the success rate of their creations also increased. And often, small inventions could greatly improve the convenience of life for the base's people. If it were in a past era of peace, the artifact refining profession would likely be a popular profession, becoming second only to combat professions. Unfortunately, in this era dominated by combat, while artifact refining has some utility, it is ultimately limited. Unless high-rank artifact refiners can develop items that pose a certain deterrent to disasters, low-rank professionals achieve very little. Sitting in the modified vehicle returning to the North District, Teacher Lai specifically sat next to Shen Xingyan and Chu Wai. Asking Shen Xingyan about his awakened profession in a voice only the two of them could hear, and recording it. He had to report the results of this trip to the school upon his return. Shen Xingyan also answered Teacher Lai's question directly. When he uttered the 4 words, farmer profession, his words were filled with calmness, making people feel that he had completely accepted his fate at this moment. Teacher Lai heard Shen Xingyan's answer and thought to himself, as expected, the profession Shen Xingyan awakened is indeed difficult for people to accept. It truly is a pity for this child's efforts over the years. Although he felt extremely regretful, as a teacher, he could do nothing. After all, awakening was not like the old college entrance examination, where you could find ways to get another chance to study if you didn't do well. Awakening was an irreversible process. Teacher Lai patted Shen Xingyan's shoulder reassuringly, then put away his record book. Other information about lifestyle professionals did not need to be recorded according to regulations. Firstly, for the child's self-esteem, and secondly, lifestyle professions did not require them to be cultivated with priority, so detailed information recording was unnecessary. Teacher Lai recalled those diligent and hardworking children from before. Some had smooth sailing, awakening a profession with unlimited potential, and ultimately found their place in this era. Others, like Shen Xingyan, awakened a lifestyle profession and then faded into obscurity. This made him unable to help but sigh at the terrifying dominion of fate, the operator. Chapter 5. As the vehicle sped forward, Shen Xingyan and the others soon returned to the school in the North District. Compared to the prosperity of the Central District, the school at this time seemed a bit desolate. The school leaders looked at the new batch of combat professionists, the smiles on their faces never fading for a moment. The number of people who awakened as combat professionists this year was significantly higher than the previous year, which was a good omen for the North District. Moreover, there were several promising talents like Chu Wai who had awakened top-tier professions. This meant another batch of vital forces for resisting disasters in the future, filling them with hope. As for the majority who were lifestyle professionists, they were not neglected. Instead, they were given plenty of encouragement. It was hoped that they would improve their profession ranks in the days to come and contribute their part to the future construction of the base. After a round of speeches by the school leaders, these newly awakened children were filled with fighting spirit, wishing they could appear in the Star Origin world right now to improve themselves. Finally, after the school determined the time for the organized trial, Shen Xingyan's class was essentially halfway to graduation, pending official confirmation after the trial. After bidding farewell to several teachers and elders they were close with, Shen Xingyan and Chu Wai stepped out of the school gates together, leaving the place they had known for over a decade. Outside the school gates, the two of them looked back at the place together, feeling a wave of emotion. So much sweat and tears had been shed here. Once they left, the next time they returned, it would likely be a completely different scene. Shen Xingyan, I'll see you at the trial in a month. During this time, I expect I'll have to stay in Star Origin to raise my profession rank, and then have my family spend some money to exchange things out for the trial. Just wait patiently. Big sis will look after you from now on. Chu Wai suppressed the sadness in her heart and spoke with a forced cheerfulness, but her reddened eyes revealed her true feelings. Hearing this, Shen Xingyin looked at his desk mate of many years, knowing full well that with the gap between their professions after graduation, the number of times they would meet in the future would be few and far between. They were like two intersecting lines that, after a brief meeting, would eventually drift further apart. The realm she would reach in the future would be a place he could only look up to. Shen Xingyin subconsciously wanted to ruffle Chu Wai's hair, but his hand stopped halfway. Instead, he patted her shoulder and said softly, "Work hard on improving yourself. We'll have to rely on your protection in the future. Don't slack off. I'll see you in a month." After saying that, he gave a light smile, waved goodbye, and then walked toward the left. This road led to a barren area near the border. Watching Shen Xingyin's departing back, Chu Wai waved her arm vigorously and shouted, "See you in a month." With his back to Chu Wai, Shen Xingyin raised his right hand and waved twice, resolutely stepping onto the road he had traveled countless times. Along the way, Shen Xingyin tried hard to memorize every plant and tree on this road, hoping to distract himself from the melancholy of parting. Upon returning home and seeing the small house he shared with his sister, Shen Xingyin composed himself and walked in with a bright smile on his face. At this time, his sister Shen Xingying had already been waiting at home for a long while. Today was the day of awakening for Shen Xingyin's class, so the entire school had a rare day off. Shen Xingying, who had been well-behaved and sensible since childhood, had been praying all day for her brother to awaken a good profession. As his biological sister, she had seen how hard Shen Xingyin usually trained. Every time the school organized a competition, he would train extra hard in private just for the prize money, all to make their lives a little better. Awakening a good profession would not only mean they no longer had to rely on the base's relief as their main source of income, but it would also allow him to step outside the border in the future to avenge their parents, of whom they had only vague memories. This had always been her brother's wish. Hearing the sound of the range detector, Shen Xingying immediately ran to the window. Looking through the thick glass, she saw that her brother was back. She hurriedly ran to open the door and rushed out with an excited expression, diving headlong into Shen Xingyin's arms. Shen Xingying looked up at her brother with a brilliant smile, asking with a hint of excitement, "Brother, how did it go? What profession did you awaken today?" Having long expected his sister to ask this, Shen Xingyin remained silent until he brought her back inside. Only then did he calmly tell her about his farmer profession. He also took out the black card produced during his awakening to show his sister. For so many years, the two of them had barely scraped by on the base's relief. And the prize money from competitions had been exchanged for various materials because they had nowhere to save money. Now that they had this black card, it marked the official start of their small family's self-sufficient lifestyle. 13-year-old Shen Xingying already understood the pros and cons of various professions. Hearing that her brother had actually awakened the worst farmer profession, she looked at the black card with its mysterious patterns. Despite her disappointment, she quickly hugged Shen Xingyin to comfort him. "Brother, it's okay. In 5 years, it'll be my turn to awaken. I'll definitely awaken a top-tier combat profession, slay disasters to earn lots and lots of money, and our lives will get better and better." Seeing his sister's determined look, a warm smile appeared on Shen Xingyin's face. He gently patted her head and said with a laugh, "Don't worry, your brother isn't that fragile. Although it's a farmer profession, it's more than enough to cover our daily expenses. Don't put too much pressure on yourself either. When I earn money, I'll exchange it for some top-quality ingredients so you won't have to work so hard." Shen Xingying nodded vigorously, but in her heart, she was determined to train even harder than before and earn more prize money to help share her brother's burden. Seeing his sister's cute and obedient nod, her little face full of resolve, Shen Xingyin smiled and went to the kitchen to prepare some food for them. Watching her brother skillfully cook in the kitchen, Shen Xingying returned to her room and began to diligently practice the set of body-refining movements taught by the school. The ingredients and grain in the kitchen were all aid provided by the base. Now that Shen Xingyan was 18, this aid would be cancelled, so he had to enter the star origin world as soon as possible to start farming. Once they finished their meal, Shen Xingyan went straight back to his room. Lying on the bed, he placed the black card on his forehead. With a mere thought, his consciousness automatically entered the world of star origin through the black card. Chapter 6. Lying on the familiar bed, Shen Xingyan only felt his vision suddenly dim, followed by a strange sense of detachment. This power seemed to carry him across the barrier of space and time, and the kaleidoscopic sights made Shen Xingyan feel a bit dizzy, so he subconsciously closed his eyes. After a brief period of darkness, Shen Xingyan felt himself stepping onto a solid floor, and it took him a while to regain his senses and gently open his tightly shut eyes. However, when he opened his eyes, everything around him became clear. A colorful scene unfolded before him, and the picturesque, exquisite surroundings appeared before him, making him feel as if he were in a fantastical world. Seeing such a scene for the first time, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "Is there such a place in the outside world too?" After Shen Xingyan finished his exclamations, he found himself on a massive platform, standing in its exact center. Shen Xingyan looked around and noticed that the edges of the platform were enveloped in a layer of mist, obscuring the view beyond. In front of him, several tall professional figures stood, clad in magnificent equipment and emanating powerful auras. Below each professional figure was a brief introduction, detailing the characteristics and skills of that profession. Shen Xingyan carefully read these introductions, even though he had already learned this knowledge in school. But it was his first time seeing the final appearance of these professions so directly, and combining them made them feel even more vivid and lifelike. As he looked at each one, a hint of envy swept across the combat professions, one by one, until he finally stopped in front of the ordinary-looking old gentleman, whose entire body exuded an aura of vicissitude. Shen Xingyan gazed at the old gentleman before him, a sincere glow emanating from his clear eyes. Unlike the other professions, with their magnificent attire and undeniable noble temperament, the farmer profession's old gentleman was so ordinary that one felt he was truly just an unremarkable old man. His face was covered in deep wrinkles, which were accentuated by his dark skin, deepening every tiny fold on his body. He wore loose clothing with a coarse cloth belt tied around his waist, and his worn-out cloth shoes were severely frayed, clearly having accompanied the old gentleman for a considerable period of time. At the same time, the old gentleman's calloused hands seemed to tell these younger generations that the hardships of the farmer profession were not just talk. The old gentleman's overall image was full of hardship and difficulty, failing to inspire any impulse of admiration or worship. Shen Xingyan gazed at the old gentleman, sighing inwardly. It was no wonder this profession was so criticized. Just such an image seemed to tell them their ultimate destiny was nothing more than a withered old man. 18 is an age full of hope, yet giving them such a predetermined outcome makes it very hard not to feel disheartened. But Shen Xingyan was different. Perhaps it was the mutual appreciation among those of the farmer profession, or perhaps his early maturity since childhood had allowed him to continuously self-regulate and eventually accept the fact of being a farmer. At this moment, looking at this frail old gentleman, not only did he feel no disdain, but a sense of familiarity arose. The emergence of this feeling made him look at the old gentleman's face before him, and he felt him become increasingly kind and amiable, as if he were seeing his own kin. Facing this old gentleman, who had stood here for who knew how many years, Shen Xingyan slowly developed a sense of respect, and then involuntarily bowed to the old gentleman, as if bowing to an elder or perhaps to his own future self in old age. And in that instant when he bowed, he didn't notice that the old gentleman's appearance suddenly became lively. His wrinkled cheeks were now radiating an unusual glow. The old gentleman's gaze at Shen Xingyan was filled with relief. And as a strange light emerged from the old gentleman and quietly entered Shen Xingyan's glabella, the old gentleman returned to his previous appearance. Shen Xingyan, who had raised his head, did not notice anything unusual at all. Just then, a mysterious voice echoed in his ear. "Welcome to Star Origin World, young professional. Countless challenges and opportunities await you here. Approach your profession statue and begin your professional journey." Shen Xingyan was not unfamiliar with this sudden voice. It had been mentioned in school that after entering Star Origin World, such prompt voices would occasionally sound, so there was no need to be alarmed. Some people had awakened life professions before, but they foolishly tried to stand by the combat professions at that moment. The result was predictable. Nothing unusual happened, and instead, due to their incorrect choice, they were expelled by Star Origin World and forbidden from entering again for 30 days. Shen Xingyan took a deep breath, his gaze firm as he approached the old gentleman before him. As he made his choice, a beam of light shot out from the professional figure, enveloping Shen Xingyan's body. Profession selection successful. Please set your name in Star Origin World. Please decide carefully, as this name will accompany you through countless days and nights in Xingyuan. Shen Xingyan thought for a moment, then recalled the words of a great ancient leader. A single spark can start a prairie fire. He immediately made his decision. Name him Sparkfire Prairie. Name setting successful. Reading your personal information. Please wait. Then Shen Xingyan's personal information appeared before him. Name: Starfire Prairie Shen Xingyan ID. 118,120,431 to 9527. Profession: Farmer Profession Skill 1. Consume a certain amount of primordial energy points to increase the growth progress of designated crops by plus 10%. The larger the area, the more primordial energy points consumed. Interval 10 hours, skill cooldown 24 hours. Strength 10 points agility, 10 points constitution, 10 points spirit, 10 points health, 100/100 points primordial energy, 18/18 points stamina, 10/10 points physical attack, 10 points magic attack, 10 points defense, 10 points speed, 10 points talent. Summon skeleton summons a skeleton monster with all attributes at 1 to engage in combat cooldown 24 hours. Money 0 gold 0 silver 0 copper. Read successful. Performing unique association setup. Setup successful. Would you like to enter Star Origin World? Enter. Shen Xingyan nodded and said. Shen Xingyan, who had reviewed his information many times, did not notice any difference between his current attributes and the previous ones. As Shen Xingyan made his choice, instantly, the scene before his eyes changed again. The previously silent platform disappeared, replaced by a dilapidated small village and a cacophony of surrounding noise. Chapter 7. Another group of small fries has entered. It feels like more and more combat professionists are awakening recently. I've seen quite a few myself. Isn't that the truth? Just now, I saw a bunch of people crowded in the rank 1 monster area, ganging up on those rabbits. The rabbits were really getting beaten up. Haha, weren't we all like that back in the day? It really makes me nostalgic for the youthful energy of our younger days. Shen Xingyan was currently wearing a virtualized outfit. Looking around, the street was packed with all sorts of people in strange equipment. It was clear at a glance that they were all members of the human race who had experienced combat, and an unconscious, fierce kai emanated from their bodies. Combat professionists, considered rare in the outside world, were ubiquitous in this small village. This contrast made Shen Xingyan feel like Grandma Liu entering the Grand View Garden, a bit overwhelmed. The street was a cacophony of hawkers' cries, shouts for team formation, and various discussions, creating an exceptionally lively atmosphere. Is this what people were like in the distant past, without external pressure? What a relaxed feeling! Shen Xingyan couldn't help but exclaim. He thought about how, in the outside world, they could be attacked by disasters at any moment. So, apart from training and going out to buy necessities, people spent most of their time in heavily fortified rooms, subconsciously feeling a sense of security. This kind of scene, however, only occasionally appeared in the central district and its surrounding areas, but the atmosphere there was never this relaxed and pleasant. Shen Xingyan thought to himself, no wonder those who have awakened a profession like to stay here all day. Firstly, it's true that they can raise their professional rank here and earn the money needed to improve their real-world strength. Secondly, it must be this relaxed atmosphere that allows them to temporarily forget the ever-present pressure of the outside world. Shaking his head lightly, Shen Xingyan checked his item bar. With a thought, an item bar with 36 slots appeared before him. The empty slots made the entire item bar look particularly desolate. Only the first 3 slots contained the essential items provided by Xingyuan World for new players: a coarse cloth pair of pants, a linen shirt, and a hoe. Item: coarse linen pants. Attributes: no rank requirement, no attribute bonus, no durability limit, provides basic cold protection and warmth. Essential pants for new farmer players. Item: coarse linen top. Attributes: no rank requirement, no attribute bonus, no durability limit, provides basic cold protection and warmth. Essential top for new farmer players. Item: hoe. Attributes: physical attack +1, no rank requirement, no durability limit, an essential tool for the farmer profession. Shen Xingyan looked at the attributes of these 3 professional starter items and couldn't help but smile wryly. Such attributes were truly far from what was described in books, perfectly fitting the description of essential starter equipment. Now he just needed a straw hat, and his complete farmer image would be set. However, Shen Xingyan also discovered one good thing about the starter equipment: there was no durability limit. As long as he kept wearing this outfit in the future, he wouldn't need to go to the tailor or blacksmith for repairs, which would save a large sum of money. After checking the equipment, Shen Xingyan then turned his gaze to the bottom right corner of the item bar, to the magical wallet that could circulate normally in reality. At this moment, it displayed 10 copper coins, which was also one of Xingyuan's basic provisions for new players. After all, engaging in professional activities in Star Origin World required stamina consumption. This money allowed new players with no economic foundation to buy food to replenish their stamina when it was low. This prevented their stamina from dropping below 3 points, which would lead to a weakened state. The silver coin and gold coin slots, of course, both displayed large, bold, colorful 0s, as if mocking Shen Xingyan and giving him an urge to eliminate them. Through repeated understanding in school, Shen Xingyan knew that the conversion rate between gold coins, silver coins, and copper coins was 1/1000. The value of 1 copper coin, according to what was taught in school, was equivalent to 10 cents before the primordial energy outbreak. And these 10 copper coins were equivalent to 1 yuan from before. By analogy, 1 silver coin was equivalent to 100 yuan, and 1 gold coin was quite a lot, equivalent to as much as 100,000 yuan from before. For Shen Xingyan to eliminate these 0s with his farmer profession, it was truly a long and arduous Tao. After checking these, Shen Xingyan's mind moved, and he immediately appeared in his profession space. Congratulations! You have entered the farmer profession space for the first time. Reward: 1 bag of wheat seeds. As soon as he entered the profession space, this prompt appeared beside Shen Xingyan's ear. He subconsciously opened his item bar, and sure enough, the wheat seeds from the prompt had appeared in the 4th slot of his item bar. With a thought, the attributes of the wheat seeds also appeared before Shen Xingyan's eyes. Item: wheat seeds. Attributes: maturity period 10 days, plantable area 600 square meters. Seeing the seeds' attributes, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but marvel at how considerate Star Origin World was. It had almost considered all the items a new player would need. Now, clothes, tools, and seeds were all provided for him. All that was left was for him to get to work himself. Although considerate, the value of these items was too low, making the primordial energy world seem a bit too stingy. Shen Xingyan's gaze shifted, surveying the space around him that belonged to him, and a sense of security arose in his heart. Every life professional would have such a profession space of their own. This was a unique function for life professionals compared to combat professionists in the Star Origin world. Life professionals like Shen Xingyan could gain corresponding professional experience points by using their professional skills and harvesting their professional results within the profession space, thereby achieving the goal of upgrading their professional rank. At the same time, the harvested professional results could be sold to the Star Origin mall or traded privately with others, thereby obtaining Xingyuan's most important resource, money. Combat professionists did not have the profession space function. They only needed to accept various quests, then go to the wilderness or dungeons to kill monsters, level up, and obtain loot. Of course, combat professionists earned money much faster than life professionals like Shen Xingyan. After all, plundering always yielded greater rewards than creating. Shen Xingyan looked at the small plot of land in the profession space, estimated to be about 1 mu, or around 600 square meters. Although it didn't look large, it was enough to keep him busy all day. As the saying goes, with grain in hand, one's heart is at ease. With this space, Shen Xingyan felt that he and his sister would not starve in the future. Chapter 8. The clothing Shen Xingyan had conjured was slowly disappearing. The special privilege granted to newcomers by Xingyuan was about to expire. To prevent newcomers from involuntarily becoming exhibitionists, Xingyuan provides a temporary clothing conjuration experience, allowing them to familiarize themselves with Xingyuan's various functions without drawing excessive attention. Shen Xingyan also noticed this change and quickly equipped himself with the newcomer's 3-piece set from his inventory, to avoid being judged an exhibitionist by the Star Origin world. The newcomer's 3-piece set occupied 3 slots in the equipment bar: weapon, upper body, and lower body. Each equipment slot could only hold 1 item and could not be stacked in the same position. Shen Xingyan looked at the vast equipment bar, which contained only these 3 lonely pieces of equipment. Being short on funds, he quickly closed the equipment bar page, not wanting to look any further. After equipping the newcomer's 3-piece set, Shen Xingyan immediately exuded the aura of a farmer. He surveyed himself from head to toe, then gently nodded, quite satisfied with his attire. The only minor flaw was that his feet were bare, firmly planted on the ground, which was somewhat unsettling for someone who had always worn shoes. But then he thought, didn't farmers in the past work in the fields without shoes? So he didn't fuss over it too much. He gently touched the rough fabric, finding it acceptable. After all, no matter how real the Star Origin world was, he was only there in spirit, and his physical sensations weren't as vivid as in reality. After a slight stretch, Shen Xingyan looked at the clothes and thought, it looks like I'll be wearing this outfit for quite a while. He took the hoe in his hand and looked at the plot of land before him. Shen Xingyan was about to start planting wheat seeds when he suddenly remembered his innate skill, Summon Skeleton, which allowed him to summon a skeleton with all attributes at 1 for combat. His mind immediately became active. Since a summoned skeleton with such attributes couldn't fight on the battlefield, could he make the skeleton help him farm? After all, if farming was forcefully explained, it could also be understood as combat for the farmer profession. If it was truly possible, then his planting efficiency should increase significantly. With this experimental thought, Shen Xingyan silently activated his summoned skeleton innate skill. And a strange melody, whose meaning he didn't understand, naturally began to flow from his lips. As he softly chanted, the ground before him began to tremble slightly, and slowly, a bone-white skull began to emerge from the soil, little by little. If anyone else, unaware of the situation, had witnessed this, they would have instinctively recoiled, a sense of panic rising within them. But Shen Xingyan felt no surprise, as it was something he had anticipated. Only the manner of its appearance struck him as rather down-to-earth. Shen Xingyan then continued to chant the unknown melody, and the skeleton before him gradually revealed itself, until he had completely finished chanting, and the entire appearance of the skeleton was fully presented before him. Looking at the somewhat short skeleton before him, Shen Xingyin couldn't help but slap his forehead. He hadn't expected such a miniature skeleton. The skeleton before him was only about the size of a 6- or 7-year-old child. It could probably be called a child laborer among skeletons. Not only that, its bones had no luster whatsoever, and some areas even showed severe damage, as if it could fall apart at any moment. Seeing this, Shen Xingyin couldn't help but sigh. If such a skeleton were taken to the battlefield, he would be socially ridiculed to death by the human race before being killed by a disaster. Shaking his head slightly, Shen Xingyin still checked the skeleton's basic attributes. Name: little skeleton can be named owner. Shen Xingyin race: undead skill, none strength, 1 point agility, 1 point physique, 1 point spirit. 1 point health. 10/10 points recovers 1 health point every 10 hours physical attack. 1 point spell attack. 1 point defense. 1 point speed. 1 point note. Can perform various combat actions according to the summoner's instructions. Looking at the attribute values, which were all 1 point, Shen Xingyin felt a sense of disappointment, even though he had already anticipated it. To still have it perform combat actions with such attributes, this note really doesn't understand what an attribute of 1 means. After a brief complaint, Shen Xingyin composed himself, took out the bag of seeds from his inventory, and, carrying the hoe, walked towards the field. Looking back at the little skeleton still standing motionless, Shen Xingyin didn't speak directly, but instead connected his mind to the little skeleton, telling it to follow him. He had naturally known about this ability when he summoned the little skeleton, without needing to deliberately explore how to use it. And the little skeleton, upon receiving the message, followed Shen Xingyin without any hesitation, though its movements were a bit slow, which is a common ailment for skeletons. Upon reaching the field, Shen Xingyin used the hoe to dig a small pit in the ground, motioning to the little skeleton to record his actions. Then he took out a seed and placed it into the dug pit. After the little skeleton had recorded these actions, Shen Xingyin handed over all the seeds, then proceeded to dig the second small pit, and then gestured for the little skeleton to put the seeds in. The little skeleton paused for a moment, standing still, and Shen Xingyin thought his idea wouldn't work. He was about to take back the bag of seeds from the skeleton's hand and continue planting. Just then, the little skeleton suddenly moved. Its finger bones precisely picked up a seed, and, mimicking Shen Xingyin's action, threw it into the small pit. Watching the little skeleton's movements, though somewhat clumsy, were overall smooth, Shen Xingyin couldn't help but clench his fist in celebration. From now on, 2 people, no 2 laborers, working together to farm, the efficiency will absolutely not be comparable to me alone. Not only will I be much more relaxed in the future, but also there will be more time for cultivation, allowing for refined planting, which will significantly increase the yield of this land. My innate skill, viewed this way, is actually quite practical and not a useless skill at all. Shen Xingyin secretly felt a surge of excitement. While such an improvement might be insignificant to those with capital, for Shen Xingyin, who was already at rock bottom and had his own goals, even a slight improvement was something worth celebrating. After his excitement, Shen Xingyin proceeded to cooperate with the little skeleton in the same manner, gradually completing the planting of the entire field. What would have normally taken Shen Xingyin 2 to 3 hours to complete alone was finished in just over an hour with the little skeleton's cooperation, a massive increase in efficiency. Congratulations, you have completed your first planting. Reward: 1 well, please set its location. This reward was also within Shen Xingyin's understanding. After surveying the surroundings, he chose to place it in the center of the field to facilitate future irrigation of the land. Chapter 9. After Shen Xingyin set the location of the water well, the notification from Star Origin World appeared once again. Setup complete. Please irrigate the farmland to help the seeds grow better. Just as he had learned before, it seemed Star Origin World was using these notifications to teach him how to complete the planting of crops step by step. similar to a novice guide. As the notification sound ended, a water well about the height of Shen Xingyan's knee appeared out of thin air in the middle of this one-mu farmland. Following the prompt, Shen Xingyan and the little skeleton moved to the central district and looked at this newly rewarded water well. The style of this water well wasn't much different from what Shen Xingyan remembered, but upon closer inspection, he realized there was a fundamental difference. In reality, well water is hundreds of meters underground and needs to be obtained through pumping equipment or primitive buckets. But the water in the well before him was full, presented right in front of Shen Xingyan's eyes, giving him the feeling that it was about to overflow. With such a water level, he didn't need to exert much effort to fetch water and could obtain it easily, which would greatly increase his irrigation efficiency. Star Origin is quite thoughtful. This saves a lot of effort, Shen Xingyan muttered to himself with satisfaction. Without further hesitation, he picked up several buckets that had appeared next to the water well. The man and the skeleton began to fetch water from the well and irrigate the nearly one-mu farmland bit by bit. Miraculously, the water in the well didn't seem to drop at all because of their actions. It remained in the same overflowing state as at the beginning. Shen Xingyan couldn't help but marvel. As expected of something given by Star Origin, the water well was just as economical and practical as the novice starter set. He wouldn't have to worry about water for planting in the future. At Shen Xingyan's signal, the little skeleton also carried out the irrigation work. Although its movements were slow, it was truly executing Shen Xingyan's commands. Like a tireless machine, it loyally executed the program set by its creator. Throughout the entire irrigation process, the little skeleton watered at a constant frequency, showing no signs of physical exhaustion despite the repetitive work. That's right, its attributes don't even have a stamina bar, so it won't have any stamina issues. This advantage will be quite helpful for my future farming. Shen Xingyan was somewhat pleasantly surprised by this discovery. After all, looking after farmland is a very tedious task. After irrigation and once the seeds sprout, a series of maintenance tasks like fertilizing, weeding, and pest control are required. These tasks take up a significant amount of time. Now that he had this tireless little skeleton to assist him, he would naturally be much more relaxed. Watching the little skeleton, which showed no signs of stopping, Shen Xingyan's satisfied expression was almost overflowing as he thought. My talent skill clearly shows that after a 24-hour cooldown, I can summon a skeleton. That means I'll have a skeleton to help every day. As long as I finish the work that can be done before the skeleton disappears, I'll be much more idle. Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan felt delighted. Working with the little skeleton could significantly shorten his labor time. Compared to other farmers, this was a considerable advantage. Looking at the little skeleton still working hard while he was lost in thought, the way it wobbled while carrying the bucket actually made him feel it was a bit cute. This was probably a case of love me, love my dog. If others knew that Shen Xingyan thought a skeleton made of white bones was cute, they would likely give him strange looks and marvel at how the world is full of all sorts of weirdos. Irrigation complete, rewarded with one novice staff. Please use it to cast your professional skill and speed up the growth of crops. Once Shen Xingyan and the little skeleton finished irrigating the one-mu plot, the Star Origin notification sounded in his ear. Hearing that Star Origin had given another reward, Shen Xingyan couldn't help but check his inventory. In the inventory that originally only had a hoe, a wooden stick-like object now sat quietly in the second slot. With a thought, he checked its attributes: item, novice staff attribute, magic attack +1, no rank requirement, no durability limit. A tool used to cast professional skills. Another good item without durability. Shen Xingyan quickly equipped it to his weapon slot, and the novice staff immediately appeared in his hand. After playing with this weapon in the truest sense of the word, for a while he couldn't help but think of Chu Wai. She had awakened as a mage. What kind of power would a professional skill released through this weapon have? After briefly imagining a scene where a fireball wiped out a swarm of disasters, Shen Xingyin began to follow the instructions in the notification. Standing in the middle of the farmland, he silently thought of activating his professional skill. At that thought, the primordial energy within his body, which he usually couldn't even detect, began to move noticeably. This feeling made Shen Xingyin, experiencing it for the first time, feel a surge of excitement. He had seen the wonders of primordial energy countless times in textbooks and teacher demonstrations, and he had long since developed a deep yearning for it. Now he could also use this power. Although he was only casting a farmer skill, it didn't dampen his excitement. As the primordial energy slowly gathered onto the staff in Shen Xingyin's hand, he lightly tapped the ground. Suddenly, an invisible aura began to spread across the surrounding 600 square meter area. The appearance of this aura made the little skeleton beside him instinctively step back. As an undead creature, it had an instinctive resistance to this aura of life. Despite its resistance, after realizing it didn't cause any actual harm, it stopped and stood quietly to the side. After finishing the professional skill, Shen Xingyin didn't look at the state of the farmland, but carefully felt the sensation of casting the skill just now. After all, in his view, the professional skill only increased the growth rate of crops. Even if the newly planted seeds' growth was accelerated by 10%, there wouldn't be any visible effect on the surface. However, to his surprise, before he could finish feeling the trajectory of the primordial energy, his vision was overtaken by the green that rapidly appeared around him. Just after his professional skill was cast, the seeds that had just been sown shot up like green onions in dry land, growing rapidly as if they had an accelerator turned on. They quickly reached knee height before finally stopping. Chapter 10. Congratulations, you have successfully cast a class skill. Farmer class experience +1. Successful use of class skill. Rewarded with 1 sickle. You can perform harvesting once the crops have matured. 2 consecutive star origin notification tones rang in Shen Xingyin's ears, but he seemed not to hear them at all, simply standing there in a daze. What's the situation? Since when did class skills have such a massive effect? Is a 10% growth speed increase really this exaggerated? Shen Xingyin looked at the scene before him in shock. These questions bubbled up involuntarily, causing his brain to stall for a moment. After a long while, Shen Xingyin finally snapped out of it. He immediately opened his attribute panel to check exactly what was going on with his class skill. The attribute column clearly displayed class skill 1. Consumes a certain amount of primordial energy points to increase the growth progress of crops within a designated area by +10%. The larger the area, the more primordial energy points consumed. Interval 10 hours. Skill cooldown 24 hours. After Shen Xingyin finished reading the class skill description word by word, he easily discovered the parts that differed from his memory. Shen Xingyin's mouth hung open in shock. How did growth speed in his previous class skill become growth progress, and how did duration, 10 hours, become interval, 10 hours? What exactly was going on? Shen Xingyin, who thought he had found the reason, became even more bewildered because of this discovery. Growth speed had become growth progress. Although it was only a one-word difference, the meaning contained within was completely different. Taking the current wheat with a 10-day growth cycle as an example, a 10% growth speed increase with a 10-hour daily duration would be equivalent to 1 hour of acceleration per day. Over 10 days, that would be 10 hours. When calculated, it didn't even amount to half a day's time. However, a 10% increase in growth progress was entirely different. As long as the skill was successfully cast, it was equivalent to gaining 1 day of acceleration for the wheat. Compared to the previous effect of less than a day, this improvement was undoubtedly a fundamental difference. For Shen Xingyin, this alone was something he had only dared to dream of after awakening as a farmer. But what was even more terrifying was that the word duration in the original skill description had been replaced with interval. One had to realize his cooldown was currently 24 hours. A 10-hour interval between skill casts had absolutely no negative impact on him right now. This clearly meant the duration limit in the class skill had been removed, which led to the spectacular scene just now. Did that mean he could cast a plus 10% progress class skill on these crops once every day? Wouldn't that mean even the most advanced crops would only take 10 days at most to mature in the future? Thinking of this, Shen Xingyan's lips began to tremble with excitement. Because his class rank was still rank 1, he could currently only plant rank 1 seeds, so the potential of this skill hadn't been fully utilized yet. But if his class rank increased and he could plant more advanced seeds in the future, the effect would be completely different. One had to know that advanced seeds weren't like wheat, which matured in a simple 10 to 20 days. Their growth periods could range from several months to several years. At that time, this class skill would truly show its power. Imagine, after someone else painstakingly cared for a crop for half a year or a year, Shen Xingyan would only need a short 10 days to successfully overtake them. If this happened to anyone else, they would probably go crazy with envy. Shen Xingyan stared blankly at the skill description, the scenes he was imagining in his mind already extending many years into the future. By then, the value of any random crop he grew would be comparable to the harvest a combat professionist earned from a day of hard fighting. How satisfying would that feel? As he fantasized, his originally dull gaze became increasingly spirited. The light in his eyes slowly transformed into something like a burning sun, causing the little skeleton nearby to turn its head and look over. Not daring to think further, Shen Xingyan quickly took a deep breath, as if exhaling all his previous depression and also as if forcing himself to calm down. Getting carried away is a great taboo. Shen Xingyan kept chanting this phrase in his heart. After all, no matter how powerful he became later, that was a matter for the future. For now, it was better to keep a low profile. He also needed to keep the changes in this class skill firmly in his heart and must never speak of it. Otherwise, in this world where martial power was supreme, there was no telling what kind of treatment he might suffer. Years of life experience told Shen Xingyan that human nature was too unstable. One should not easily test human nature. The moment you decide to test it, you are destined to lose miserably. Having calmed down, Shen Xingyan still couldn't figure out why his skill had undergone such a mutation. What was the root cause? However, after analyzing it over and over, he still had no clue. Unable to think of a reason, he could only attribute it to his own luck and having received the favor of the star origin world. Setting aside his thoughts, Shen Xingyan finally remembered the 2-star origin prompts from earlier. He immediately checked his attributes, name, Sparkfire Prairie Shen Xingyan serial number, 118,120,431 to 9527 class, farmer class skill, 1. Consumes a certain amount of primordial energy points to increase the growth progress of crops within a designated area by plus 10%. The larger the area, the more primordial energy points consumed. Interval, 10 hours. Skill cooldown, 24 hours. Rank 1 experience, 2/100 strength, 10 points agility, 10 points physique, 10 points spirit, 10 points HP. 100/100 points primordial energy, 13/18 points stamina, 10/10 points physical attack, 10 points magic attack, 10 points defense, 10 points speed. 10 points talent. Summon skeleton, summons a skeleton monster with all attributes at 1 to fight cooldown, 24 hours money. 0 gold, 0 silver, 10 copper. Looking at the rank and experience bar that appeared in his attributes, Shen Xingyan had already expected this. Before coming here, he knew that this was unique to the star origin world. One could increase their class rank by gaining experience points to achieve the goal of boosting attributes. At this moment, his experience had reached 2 points, the initial 1 point plus the 1 point gained from casting the skill just now. Although the experience gain was small this time, it could be considered the start of his path to leveling up. He then checked the sickle in his inventory. Item, sickle attributes. Attack +1, no rank requirement, no durability limit, an essential tool for the farmer class. Seeing that the sickle's attribute still showed no durability limit, made him feel another bit of joy. Since deducing that his future class potential was enormous, Shen Xingyan's personality had become much more cheerful. Now, everything he looked at seemed beautiful. Looking at the wheat seedlings before him and the field, where many strong weeds had appeared, due to the skill's powerful effect, Shen Xingyan was still happy to take action with the little skeleton, joyfully starting the weeding operation. As he pulled weeds, he hummed an unknown tune. Anyone seeing him would think this farmer was in a very good mood, not at all like other new farmers who had frowns on their faces as if someone owed them money. To be able to reach the weeding stage on the first day of planting, Shen Xingyan was definitely the first person in history. However, such an achievement could not be revealed and could only be known to himself. He couldn't help but think, how lonely it is to be invincible, how lonely.